Mass in second grade. I started serving Mass. And my parents said, if you want to serve Mass, then you have to get up and go by yourself. So I would get up early in the morning, walk, 14, 15 blocks, serve Mass, and come back. And I would always, have the chance to spend time in the back of the church. And what's interesting, there was always this group of women, like there are many parishes in the back of the church, and they would say the rosary every day. And I would spend time before the tabernacle, because we didn't have the Blessed Sacrament exposed, just praying and meditating and hearing that rosary in the background. And many of the women say that I am the fruit of their prayer of the rosary as a vocation. Well, the first contact with Dominicans was at Providence College, but I didn't think I was going to be a Dominican when I first began Providence College. At the time, I was at a diocesan seminary, and every year I would go to a monastery of Cistercians, St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts, for an annual retreat. And during one of those years, they had a solemn profession, and I was able to witness that. And it was a very moving experience. The brother would make his vows, he would go over and sign the book, he'd come back, they'd place a cowl on him, he'd kneel, then all the brothers would come up and embrace him one at a time. At that point, it was a great moment of grace for me to do something like that with my life, to be a religious. And for me, what was important was that a community would have a common life. I think that was very important. That they would have, a strong tradition and also a tradition of study. That would be a group that was international, because I always had a desire to also go to the missions. A Marian devotion, my home parish was St. Mary's. And I remember that when I went with my dad in second grade to register at our parish, the parish priest had a ring on, and I only knew that because he patted me on the head. And I felt the ring, and he said, one day you should be a priest. Think about being a priest. And from that time on, I thought of being a priest. But not until my experience at St. Joseph's Abbey did I know that there was this group called religious, and that they lived a very different way of life, still being priestly, and yet also doing more. And that's how I really became a Dominican. I had Dominicans in class, I met them, I talked with them, I was inspired by them, and then I went off to the novitiate. The Vicarious in Africa really began in 1960 to 1970. The province was there for 10 years. We began a new seminary called St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary. Many diocesan priests and a number of bishops currently all were trained by Dominicans at our seminary. We left in 1970. Some friars went back in the mid-80s to take care of the nuns as chaplains, also working with the poor in Western Kenya and Kisumu. Then as a province, we went back again in 1991. And a number of the brothers went very early on to reestablish our presence at the request of Cardinal Otunga, who was one of our students at St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary. We have a little house in Karen. We were in different little places, but we ended up outside of Tangaza College, which is a consortium of religious, which a number of great people have gone to and studied at. And from there, we began to grow, and I went there in 1995. I visited most Dominicans in Africa, obviously within Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, but also in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Nigeria, and Ghana, West Africa, many of the countries there. Coming back to the States, I also went to visit brothers in Pakistan, obviously brothers who are in Europe, Canada, and Mexico, Colombia, South America. So there's been a sort of visiting of different parts of the world overall where Dominicans are. And it's ironic that we all pretty much the same. We all hold the same values, the same charism, we have a great passion for preaching Christ, and that does exhibit itself in different ways depending upon the culture of that particular place, about where the poor are, where there are injustices, but also how you make an effect on culture as a whole that sort of just seeps into the lives of people and pulls them away from Christ. As a priest, I always recall the words, written by John Paul II of the Church and the Eucharist when I have the Eucharist in my hand. He quotes St. Augustine and says that, when we receive this, do we receive it as a sign of our unity or a condemnation against us? And so it's a time of great reflection about how I am also an agent of what I receive. And I think that's really part of the life of St. Dominic, that he preached a message of reconciliation of all things in Christ, reconciling all people together, and that's the particular character I always think of Dominican preaching, to bring all people together but to do so in a way that changes their minds and then their hearts, so they then follow that heart back to the Lord.